Hello, everyone. My name is Tommy, and how are you today? I am the author of Love Beyond Pain, Walk and Run While Wounded. Today, I want to share with you, in my book, I discuss 5 different physical wounds, and I take those wounds and I correlate them to the 5 different wounds to the soul. And so, in today's lesson, we're going to be talking about the first wound out of 5. And that wound is going to be the lesson on the abrasion or abrasional wounds. And I'm going to first discuss the physical aspect of abrasional wounds to the physical body. And then what I'll do is I'll go into the correlation of soul wounds as it relates to abrasional wounds. So I am going to be looking down at my notes. So you may see me talking to you directly, or you may see me looking down reading something from my paper, but I will also have my own personal input. Everything that I'm sharing with you today is just a revelation that God gave me about soul wounds and how soul wounds and physical wounds are pretty much the same. They just affect us in different ways. And so today we're going to start with the first one, which is abrasional wounds. And I want to tell you what an abrasional wound is. Okay, an abrasion wound is sometimes referred to as a superficial wound. Okay, and they occur during an accident or a slip where the skin rubs against a rough surface. The wound can vary in severity. Anyone can sustain these types of wounds. So you might slip on the rug, or you might slip outdoors, or you might be riding your bike or something like that. We'll get into an example. But this is an abrasion type wound to the skin, all right? For example, someone is riding a bike on a sidewalk and falls off onto a rough surface, scraping the skin off, or riding a motorcycle and end up what is called road rash. The first layer of the skin comes off, causing scuffing, scratches, and wearing down on the skin. All right. So if you ever had like a rug rash, or if you ever fell on the sidewalk, or if you are a motorcycle rider and you ever fell off your motorcycle and you ended up with a road rash, these are abrasion type wounds. But abrasional type wounds could be very severe. It just depends on the type of surface that you hit, or how hard you hit a surface. But nonetheless, it's a superficial wound that removes the first layer of the skin. And so how does it heal? It heals when it's cleaned up, and sometimes ointment is applied. The outer layer of the skin forms new cells in the bottom of the wound, and healing begins from the bottom up. When a scrape is removed, all of the layers of skin form new skin around the edges of the wound. All right? The function of the skin is to protect, and there are 3 layers of skin, just like there are 3 functions of the soul and 3 functions of the spirit. All right? These functions of the skin, the first one is epidermis. That's EPIDERMIS, epidermis, which is the outer layer of the skin, providing a waterproof barrier and creates our skin tone. The dermis, DERMIS, which is beneath the epidermis, contains tough connective tissues and hair follicles and our sweat glands. The deeper subcutaneous tissue is the hypodermis, that is made of fat and connective tissues. So now let us get into, what we all been waiting for is what is the correlation between this type wound in correlation to a soul wound. So the second part of this that we're going to be discussing is how this abrasion affects us to our soul. All right. So the abrasional wound is described as a superficial wound, as I said before. These soul wounds could be, number one, someone you love yelled at you. Maybe they humiliated you or belittled you in some way, and it affected your soul. Okay, so remember, this is a superficial kind of soul wound. It wasn't nothing too deep, but it could be deep, just depending on what is being said and how it's being said. But we want to stay with it being a superficial type of situation between you and a loved one, where someone's voices got raised or something was said that hurt your feelings or something of that nature. The other thing could be someone was dishonest about a matter, and depending on the severity of the matter, it could really rub you the wrong way. All right, another superficial type soul wound, it could be someone held your hand too tightly, and they were really mean about it, and it was really, they were aggravated in holding your hand or passing by you or something another, rubbed you the wrong way. All right. Someone deliberately took something of value and lied about it, or broke something that you regarded as valuable. And this hurt your feelings because maybe they didn't see it as a valuable item to them, but it was a valuable item to you. So the next one could be a promise was made and wasn't kept, and you were depending on it. This also is a superficial wound, depending on the severity. Someone at work or at church may have made you mad by disrespecting you, and this rubbed you the wrong way. All of these are superficial wounds, okay? They are what is called abrasional soul wounds. Just like the body can become, affected by abrasional wounds physically, our souls can also become affected by soul wounds. So you can see where I'm going with this. And these abrasional wounds could be what the Bible describes as little foxes that spoils the vines. And anyone can cause these type of soul wounds, even children. And when I say little foxes that spoil the vine, what I'm talking about is that it's a very little menial matter that hurt your soul, the emotional part of you, but nonetheless, it still affected you. It still hurt you in some kind of way, even though it is a superficial soul wound. So let me give you an example. Let's say there's a husband and wife situation, and the husband and wife spends a lot of time building their family unit and establishing their children's future. Along the way, they fail to spend time with each other. It is through these frustrations where more patience is needed, but tempers flare. One spouse may yell at the other and say hurtful things. This type of soul wound inflicted, if it's left unattended, can cause emotional soul wounds, leaving the marriage open for infection. So we know that in relationships, people get into spats or arguments or disagreements, and feelings are hurt. All right. So we need to rectify the situation immediately, because even with a superficial physical wound, if it's left unchecked and not tended to, it can cause an infection, even with a superficial wound. So the soul is the same way. If it's not attended to immediately, it can go into something deeper than what it originally was, as far as being a superficial wound. And this type of wound can be healed. Just remember, as there are 3 layers to the skin, to our physical bodies, there are also layers of hurt to one's soul. Since this is an abrasional soul wound, your emotions can become scraped or bruised. You can bruise somebody's soul through things said or things done, even though it may seem minute to you. It was not minute to that person, all right? You can recover from this. However, in any relationship, communication is the basis for a good marriage. If you're not communicating in a marriage, you're not going to be successful. That's just the bottom line. It's just like being in a business. It's just like, at school, getting an education. Communication is essential to a relationship if we are expecting that relationship to survive. All right. One can just not decide not to communicate if you're in a partnership or if you're in a relationship. The offending party needs to express remorse and acknowledge that he or she hurt the soul of the other. Giving validation is one of the good ways of being able to help heal that person from that particular soul wound of whatever you did. Giving validation, saying that you're sorry, acknowledging that whatever was said and done, you can see how that hurt you. All right. And a lot of times we don't give validations when we hurt someone. We don't acknowledge to them, I can see how this hurt you. I understand that I've hurt you and I'm sorry for hurting you. We just kind of just let it go, and it wasn't that bad, and it may not have been that bad to you, but it was that bad. It was that bad to that person. So this is the way that we can avoid infection to the soul. All right. You may not can see an infection of the soul, but it's there. All right. It's there. So remember, where the soul is the subject matter of our discussion, the soul can encounter shock, denial, and or disbelief, which is traumatic. All right. And as a reminder, the function of the skin is to protect us from microbes and elements. It helps to regulate the body's temperature and permits sensations such as touch, heat, and cold. So allow me to break down the functions of the soul, all right? And this is where it gets really interesting at, is that the soul consists of 3 parts, all right? And so the first part that we're going to discuss today is the will, all right? And so, the first part we're going to discuss today is the mind of the soul. And you would think, well, my soul has a mind. Your soul is made up of your mind, your will, and your emotions. All right. So in Proverbs 2:10, it provides an answer that the mind is part of the soul. And you can just write these scriptures down and go and look at them later and go and listen to this recording again. But in Proverbs 2:10, this provides an answer that the soul has a mind, and the mind is part of the soul. It says, wisdom will enter your heart and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Because knowledge is a mind matter, this is part of the soul's function. In Lamentations 3:20, it says, my soul remembers them well. This indicates that the soul remembers things, all right? In addition, in Proverbs 19:21 and in Proverbs 24:14, in Psalms, it says also in chapter 139 and verse 14, my soul knows it well, and to know is a matter of the mind. All right. So that is the first thing that is part of your soul, which is your mind. The second part of the soul is the will. In Job 7:15, it says, my soul would choose. My soul would choose. And in Job 6:7, it says, my soul refused. My soul refused. So to choose and to refuse are both decisional functions of the will. All right. So it's safe to say that the soul makes decisions, which is our will. All right. So in Numbers 30:2, it states that a man's that a man vows a vow to God or swears an oath to bind himself by the pledge, which in terms is binding oneself, is occurring. So when you make a vow and when you make a pledge to God or to someone else, you are binding yourself, you are binding your soul to that person or to God. So when we do the wedding vows or ordination vows, or if we're in the military or if we're in the law enforcement, they make a vow or they make an oath and they bind themselves, they bind their souls to that oath that they are taking. And this binding in Numbers occurs 11 times within that chapter, and it literally means to bind one's soul. Again, to bind one's soul is to make a decision, thereby making the will a part of the soul. So now we know that there are two things that are a part of the soul, which is the mind, all right, and the will. And the second part is our emotions, all right? Emotions can comprise of many things such as love, hate, and grief. The Songs of Solomon in 1 and 7 and Psalms 42 and 1 shows us that to love is a function of the soul. But love is not an emotion. It's a function that ignites our emotions, all right? And in 2 Samuel 5 and 8, Psalms 107 and 18, and in Ezekiel 36 and 5, it shows us that hating, loathing, and despising are part of the soul. Despising someone in your soul is hatred. Love and hatred are functions of our emotions, like joy, as it states in Isaiah 61 and 16, and in Psalms 86 and 4. We lift up our souls with joy. And in Job 30 and 25, it speaks of bitterness, misery, and grief in the soul within our emotions. So we can get into the three parts of the spirit, but that is not what we're discussing today. We're discussing abrasional wounds to the soul. In my book, Love Beyond Pain, Walk and Run While Wounded, we all experience wounds to our soul committed by those that we love and those that we may come in contact with every day on a daily basis. And all throughout the world, people's souls are being affected by someone or something that occurred in their lives. And this can be very traumatic. And if it's left untreated, unattended to, then it can grow and it can fester and it can get out of control. So an abrasional wound, even though it is superficial, it is still a serious matter that we should and want to address when we have these type of encounters, whether it's in a marriage, whether it's in a business relationship, whether it's at school getting education, whether it's a parent and a child, no matter what it is, abrasional wounds can occur at any given moment, any given time, and it can occur anywhere. So we want to make sure that when we're going through a situation with someone that we have offended, that we want to make sure that we ask them to forgive us. All right? So love and forgiveness go hand in hand. You cannot have love and expect that you're going to forgive someone. You cannot forgive someone and expect that you're going to love them. Love and forgiveness, as we know, go hand in hand. I talk in my book about how Jesus died on the cross. And when he died on the cross, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing." And so what was he referring to? I would like to believe that he was referring to Forgive them for their weaknesses and their ignorances. Those that nailed Jesus to the cross, whether it was the Romans, whether it was the Jews, whoever it may have been, was ignorant to who Christ was. They were ignorant to the fact that he came to redeem us back. But those who were with Jesus, those that ate with him and slept with him and walked with him, and those that listened to his teachings, they were weak. They denied him. They betrayed him. They walked away from him when he was going through his suffering. And so, we would like to think that we wouldn't do some of those things to people that we love. But every day, people are being wounded through betrayals. They are being wounded through being denied. They are being wounded through being lied on. It could be anything that caused an abrasional wound. So we have to be very sensitive, and we have to ask God to give us love and patience when we're dealing with one another. And so today's lesson was on abrasional wounds and how we correlated the physical wound to a soul wound, to an abrasional soul wound, which is a surface wound, but it still hurts. It still is painful. And we need to take care of these type of wounds as soon as we possibly can, because if we don't, then it will rise to something that may get out of control and we may not want to handle. So this will be our first lesson. And so stay tuned. I'm going to be posting these on YouTube, where we will go down the different list of the different 5 physical wounds, and we'll correlate those 5 physical wounds to soul wounds. And it's going to get really interesting, because the deeper we go, just like the surface of our skin has a top layer, a middle layer, and a bottom layer, with each layer being affected in some kind of way, the severity gets worse and worse. And so you want to stay tuned and make sure that you listen to the upcoming videos on soul wounds, because it's going to get really deep, and you're going to really see how we affect one another through soul wounds. Again, I'm Faye Fulton, and you can just call me Tommy. And the name of my book is Love Beyond Pain, Walk and Run While Wounded. Thank you, and have a great day.